Hi everyone. Today we're going to look at a bit of cooker safety. In the morning I might wake up and think, oh, it's quite cold, and consider thinking about cooking in and around my tent. If I were to cook inside the tent, this causes me a few problems. A naked flame inside the tent might cause it to catch alight. Because of the construction of tents, this means that if it were to catch alight, the material will constrict quickly, often with you inside of it. You also have risks of things like carbon monoxide poisoning. So at all times, whenever you're using a cooker, we make sure that we do this completely outside. If you do want to cook, and you want to cook under the cover of your tent, it's appropriate to sit with your cooker at least an arm's distance away. And that's with me leaning forwards. This allows me to be able to keep an eye on the food or the water that I'm boiling, but also keep inside my tent and perhaps to administer to some of my equipment while something's cooking. So I've got my cooker here. This is the jet boil stash that's available to you when you move on to your DofE Gold Award. It's a lightweight cooker, comes with a few advantages, but as you can see, has the possibility of tipping over. So we have a few additional parts to this cooker, which allows me to think about how to keep it nice and stable. There's a little stabilizer at the bottom. The standard DofE cooker, known as the Trangia stove, is much more stable than this stove, so you don't need to consider stabilizing the bottom of it. Whenever I'm looking to connect a cooker and its gas, I need to ensure that when I connect it to a gas cylinder, that the nozzle that allows me to give it more or less gas is fully turned to the minus. This stops any gas from escaping from the top and starting to fill the area. If I were to put the gas on and attach the nozzle, or allow gas to escape whilst not lighting it, this will cause what's called a flare-up. This momentary burst of flame can cause slight burns and is certainly a shock. We're always going to try and avoid that. If you're looking to light your cooker and you turn it on, light a match or lighter, and it doesn't go up straight away, we're going to turn it straight off again. If you do this as a pair, you can look to have one person controlling the gas, turning it on, whilst the other person lights it. This allows us to do this as safely as possible. If the first strike of a match doesn't work, the other person will simply turn off the gas. So what does that look like for an individual? I've got my matches, I've got my water ready to go, and I'm going to get my match ready to light. Because of the type of cooker that it is, I'm going to light from underneath. There's another technique with the Trangia cooker, which is known as the light and drop. I can drop a match from the top. I won't need to do that in this instance. When I strike a match, I want to make sure that my fingers are close enough so that as I draw the match up, it's not going to snap the match. I'm going to turn the gas on, light, and apply that from underneath. Once the gas is on, I'm going to have a slightly scarred or burnt end to my match. If I place the end in the ground, it'll make sure that I've stopped any potential for this match to relight. Now this cooker is on, I need to make sure that I'm aware of people in and around it. I'm going to put my water straight onto boil, and it doesn't matter if I'm using a jet boil like this or a Trangia. I'm going to put the lid on top to improve the efficacy of the burn. I'm then going to turn it all the way up until the water's boiling. Whilst this is happening, if it's cold out, you might consider putting your hands close to, but not on, any of the metal parts. This will allow me to warm up slightly. If I need to, I could look back and start administering to the equipment within my tent. So that would be packing away my clothes, perhaps packing away my sleeping bag and rolling up my sleeping mat. If I look to do these things, I'm looking to work concurrently whilst doing something else. You can see that I'm a good arm's distance away and that I'm able to keep an eye on this cooker. Today, as all I'm going to cook is a little bit of hot water, but the main takeaway points are no cooking inside of tents. Cooking inside of tent could cause the tent to ignite and could cause carbon monoxide poisoning, both of which we need to avoid. As such, our do's, we do look to ensure when sitting inside of our tent that the cooker is an arm's distance away. That's when leaning forwards. We also need to make sure that we do tie back any of our tent so there's no excess material flapping around. When we light our cooker, we do ensure that it's fully off, turned on, lit, and if it doesn't light straight away, we're then going to turn it off again to allow gas to dissipate. When it's lit, we do ensure that we always have some sort of either food, that's things like beans, or water inside the pot of our cooker at all times. If we don't, you're liable to burn a hole straight through the bottom of the cooker. Because these cookers are quite expensive, that's not going to be a good idea for us. So my water's nearly boiling now, and I need to think about what I'm going to use it for. I might use it for a boil in the bag meal. I might also think to use it for a hot drink. Equally, at the end of an evening, if you've got a thick and quite tough bottle, like a Nalgene or one of those cig bottles, you could fill that with hot water and use it like a hot water bottle. As long as the lid is sealed properly, that shouldn't spill anywhere and you'll have a warm enough drink for the morning. When I look to turn off my cooker, I approach from underneath and use the nozzle to turn it all the way down. Next, I'm going to lift the top and the bowl off and then look to pour my water directly, in this case, into my cup. This might be a cup of coffee or for some hot chocolate. Any water that I've not used, after it's been boiling for a few minutes, we could look to use as fresh water for out, say, on a gold expedition in the mountains, or I could use that for washing up my spoons or anything else for the main cooking that I do for the day. When packing away your stove, you're going to need to leave it for a few moments. If you were to touch the metal parts, particularly where the flame has been, straight away, you're liable to burn yourself. A small burn isn't a huge problem, but it will be really painful and we'll need to administer first aid to this if it becomes bad. If you do burn yourself, the first aid that we look to apply is cold or cool running water for up to 20 minutes. So be aware that we need to make sure when the cooker turns off, we wait for around 5 minutes before we start touching any of the parts. For me, I'll often touch gently to check that it is indeed cool. When we take our cooker apart, we follow the instructions from the cooking videos and make sure that we pack all the parts away carefully. A lot of these cookers will come with delicate parts. This one in particular has a nozzle that needs to fold away before being placed in its bag. Some of the gas canisters will come with a cap. If you have one of these, place the cap back on and then take apart any other parts to your cooker and pack that fully away. Cookers should be away in your bag when they're not in use. Excess water you might choose to throw away. If you do that, make sure you tip it somewhere where it's not going to spill onto your own equipment. For me, I'm going to put it down at the end of my tent. Once it's empty, I can then pack away the equipment back inside of the cooker, ready to be used later in the day. It doesn't matter if you're using the Jetboil Stash or the Trangia. Once it's not in use, it needs to be fully packed away and placed in your bag. Matches and gas cylinders equally need to go away properly in your bag. XX matches can either be put in the bin or placed the opposite way round in your matchbox so you know not to use it. Most cookers take about 2 to 5 minutes to boil a litre of water. That means you should be able to wake up, get your cooker set up and be eating in about 20 minutes each morning. If you've got any questions, please come and find me up in the main office in the senior school, or look to the other videos for more advice.